what I want to do now is give you a kind of update on where we are with our public cloud offerings. So in the past Cloud Field Days, myself and Andrew have talked about our cloud products around Veeam Backup for AWS and Azure and Google. So I'm going to just give you an overview of some of the capabilities, and then AZ is going to dive into a nice demo, show you some of how we can protect some of these different workloads in the public cloud and how they all integrate. So it'll be me and Andrew. You've heard from me before Cloud Field Days. Andrew's done lots of demos in the past, and we're both part of the product strategy group at Veeam. So what we're going to focus on is 3 individual products, but as Anthony mentioned in a previous session, these are a modular approach that Veeam takes. So not only can you deploy these individually if you say are just an AWS or a Microsoft Azure customer, you can also deploy all of these products and integrate them to centrally manage all your data protection platforms through Veeam Backup and Replication. And Andrew's going to do a really good demo of how this all fits together. So across these 3 core platforms, what I want to do is just show you some of the key capabilities and give you a little bit of an overview of how the architecture actually fits together. So some core capabilities, the first one makes perfect sense, cloud native backup. So protecting workloads in the public cloud across either AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud Platform natively. So when we say natively, what we mean is we're leveraging the cloud native technologies. We're not using agents. We are literally doing it agentless through the cloud API. So integrating with AWS to leverage snapshots and integrating with like S3 to offload the backups to the object storage platforms. Now, by leveraging native snapshots, very similar to how Veeam's done it throughout the years in vSphere with vSphere snapshots and those kind of things, we're doing the same things in the public cloud, leveraging those native cloud snapshots to help us lower those RPOs. Everything's policy-based, so we just create our backup policies, and it's a kind of set and forget type policy. So you define what you want to do around your scheduling, whether you want to do snapshots, whether you want to do backups, whether you want to do replicas to different accounts and regions, and how long you want that retention period to be for. Once you set it, you just leave it. The backups will run, they will be taken, and all your data lifecycle management will be managed accordingly, depending on how long you want to keep the backups for. The backups will be moved across different tiers as well, and we can talk about that in a minute. Also, things like virtual private cloud infrastructure. So if we just talk about AWS for a moment, when you think about protecting your workloads, it's not just the instance or the RDS database that you need to protect. It's also the infrastructure that you configure. So things like security groups, firewall rules, subnets, IP addresses, those kind of things, ACLs, they all need to be protected and be able to restore those in the event of a failure or a deletion to bring those workloads back. If you just go and protect an EC2 instance that's maybe just a front-end web server, and then you restore that, how are you going to get access to it if you don't know what all the firewall rules were? So being able to protect not only the workloads, but also the infrastructure across these cloud platforms is very critical to implementing a cloud-based disaster recovery solution. Application consistent as well, leveraging things like volume shadow services or pre-backup and post-backup scripts. Full restores, so recovering entire instances, file level recovery as well. So across these 3 capabilities you see at the bottom around full restores, file level restores, and instant recovery, you can restore your workloads or individual files or databases or whatever you're protecting across a number of different ways. You can overwrite existing workloads. You can go and restore to different regions and accounts or subscriptions, or you can go and just individually restore a single file. Now, of course, the public cloud is really great at just spinning up workloads and just doing what you want. And that kind of elasticity that's been a kind of key buzzword around the public cloud for so long has really helped drive this. But of course, cost is at the forefront of everything you do in the cloud. It's very easy to go and spin up workloads and just build up a massive bill. I've done it myself. And when you have to come and submit your expenses, it's quite embarrassing when you say to your boss, sorry, big bill here. But everything that Veeam does has cost at the forefront. So things like backing up to object storage. Snapshots get expensive very quickly in the public cloud, so you don't want to keep them around for a long time. So we have the ability to offload those snapshots out to object storage across the different cloud platforms. Leveraging things like archive tier, whether it's like S3 Glacier, S3 Glacier Deep Archive, Azure Blob Archive, those kind of things, using the longer term object storage repositories and storage capabilities to again help lower those costs. Everything that Veeam does in their cloud products has inbuilt cost calculations. So when you go and create those policies, you actually define your policies, set all your scheduling, pick your different storage repositories. It will tell you, based on the list price for those public clouds, how much this policy is going to cost you to implement every month. Things like dynamic workers as well. So we can spin up very small instances in each region to help perform backup tasks, to move data around those regions. So we actually keep that data within the regions, because that helps lowers cost. Because anytime you move data across different regions on any of the cloud platforms, you're charged for that. So the way that we do dynamic workers and spin these up and spin them down helps reduce data transfer costs in the public cloud. Now, of course, security is a big piece. So meeting the best practice requirements for these public cloud providers is very critical as well. So everything that Veeam does meets those requirements. So being able to build out, for example, in AWS, a separate backup account using a separate AWS account for these different environments. So you would have an AWS account, say, for production, one for staging, one for backup, all with different role support, so different security permissions, so things like IAM roles across different accounts. You can protect workloads across multiple accounts, across multiple Azure subscriptions, multiple Azure accounts, multiple Google projects. So we meet all the best practices for data storage in these public clouds. Of course, encryption, leveraging things like encryption at rest with your data, when it's stored in object storage, is critical as well. So we integrate with things like Amazon's KMS, their key management service, to help protect and encrypt that data when it's at rest. You simply go and create some keys in Azure or AWS, and then we can just pick those keys from a drop-down when you're configuring your backup policies or your repositories, and we can use that envelope encryption to protect that data. Role-based access control and multi-factor authentication don't really need any explanation around those. You know, everyone's been doing role-based access control and MFA for so long, but that helps keep the environment secure against that kind of direct threat that we always have whenever anything's kind of deployed in an environment. And then, of course, this hybrid and multi-cloud world that we find ourselves living in today, nobody seems to have just one platform anymore. Nobody just has vSphere. Nobody just has some physical Windows servers. They have a mixture of everything. Pretty much even your small businesses now have maybe a little bit of cloud infrastructure. Maybe they're using a bit of AWS. Maybe they've got a couple of servers in their cupboard in the back of their office. But being able to protect workloads across all these different platforms, whether you are that small business with just a few workloads, or you're an enterprise with thousands of workloads spread across multiple cloud platforms, multiple hypervisors on-prem, is critical. So with Veeam's perspective and what you'll see in the demo with AZ, this one platform to centrally manage all your environments, whether it is AWS, Azure, Google, vSphere, Hyper-V, Red Hat, Kasten and Kubernetes, which Michael will show you later. And because of that centrally managed platform, you have the ability to then move your workloads and migrate your workloads across different platforms, whether it's backup and recovery, whether it's migration across these different platforms. And then, of course, universal licenses. It's no good buying socket-based licenses to protect cloud workloads, or it's no good buying like licenses to protect your cloud workloads if you have on-prem workloads. So with the Veeam Universal Licensing, we have the ability to just protect any workload, and it's just based on whatever I'm protecting. So you'll go buy, say, 100 licenses, and you can go and protect 100 instances in AWS. You can protect 50 instances in AWS, 20 RDS instances, some more vSphere instances, and so on. It's very simple and very easy to use.
David,
yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? And I don't mean to challenge you, but I think it's interesting seeing you mention one platform, cloud mobility, but then talk about all the different services and solutions that you have. Where is there like an architecture of the best practices in terms of where to place these solutions? Because I know that there's a Veeam marketplace in Azure, there's a Veeam marketplace solution in AWS, there's on-premise. Where am I building this and how should it look?
Yeah, so
I think it's hilarious that your next slide is architecture. So
yeah, so obviously, as Anthony mentioned at the beginning, everything we do is modular. So you can deploy these individually, or you can deploy them centrally from Veeam Backup and Replication. So how you design that is based on what kind of platforms you're using. Obviously, everything we do in the cloud is appliance-based. And yeah, we have a number of reference architectures that are getting released on veeam.com that help you understand how these all get deployed. But you can either deploy them individually from the cloud marketplaces, so AWS, Azure, whatever you want to do, or you can deploy these all directly from Veeam Backup and Replication.
Okay, one other question that I had in terms of security. Do y'all work with object lock on object-based storage?
We do, yes. So from an immutability perspective in S3, you can turn on the object lock with Veeam Backup and Replication and use that. We've talked about that at previous cloud field days and tech field days, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on to the architecture, I'm just going to give you kind of like a quick highlight of what we actually do from an architecture perspective. Now I'm going to focus on AWS, but the principles are the same across all the different cloud platforms. So based around the different services we protect, everything we do is through snapshots and through object storage. And as I mentioned, we deploy a simple appliance, whether that be from the marketplace or from Veeam Backup and Replication. We take our backups and snapshots. We then, once we have those snapshots in place, offload those to S3. So we create what we call an OVBK, which is an object storage Veeam backup file. And that's then stored in S3. Depending on the policies that you define and the retention periods, once you hit a certain retention period, so it's like 90 days, we'll move things to S3 Glacier to lower the costs. And then after 180 days, we'll move things to Deep Archive. Now, obviously, that impacts your RTOs. So you need to understand the time that it takes to get that data back. But essentially, we just take some snapshots. Then if you want to, we offload those to S3 as object storage. So we have different locations for the backups.
So the old furry tooth backup guy to me will sit here and scream, snapshots are not backups. And I will scream this until the cows come home. So from that, and also I am a big advocate for, so your slide here is showing you dropping Amazon instances into an Amazon S3 bucket.
Yep.
You have the capability to go to other S3 or object-based services, right? Or S3 compatible?
Through Veeam Backup and Replication, yeah. If you want to wait till I get to the end, then we can show you that.
Well, before we get quite to the end, one other question is, when we drop them into those buckets, can that data then be encrypted?
Yes, it can. Yeah. Yeah. Using the KMS service that, or passwords or whatever, anything that you store in your S3 object storage or Azure Blob can all be encrypted data at rest. So also from a kind of RTO perspective and an RPO perspective, we have the ability to do snapshot replicas across different regions, different accounts. So when you're thinking about what your RPOs are, it's very quick to recover from a snapshot, but it takes longer to recover from objects, backup stored in object storage. So we have the ability to not only do snapshots, we have the ability to do snapshot replicas in different regions and different accounts, and then offload those into S3. So as I mentioned, from a kind of recovery perspective, we're able to recover to all these different regions and locations as well. So what you see here is we can recover from snapshots, we can recover from object storage, we can recover from Glacier and Deep Archive, and we can also recover all the VPC configuration items that you would expect. So those security groups, IAM roles, that kind of thing. Same with file level recovery. We have the ability to recover individual files, whether it be from an EC2 instance, an EBS volume, or even an EBS snapshot. What we essentially do is we spin up a very small worker, mount that backup, whether it be a snapshot or from object storage, and then you're presented with a file browser that allows you to go and pick individual files, download those to your desktop, or you can actually just go and restore those files to their original locations directly into those instances as well.
Quick question. Do you have a sort of a browser or something so that I can have, all the files that were, protected in time so that I can check?
Yeah, so if you look at it from a kind of Veeam Explorer perspective, where you can just everything that Veeam's done on-prem with their Veeam Explorer, so you can go mount the backups, go through a browser, look at all the individual objects that you need to restore. We do exactly the same thing in the public cloud. You're presented with a web browser that gives you essentially like a Windows Explorer view. You can go through, pick all those individual files, and then either download them to your local desktop or go and say, I want to restore these directly back to their existing location. So yeah, we do it through a browser. Now, the final thing that Jim mentioned as a question is the capabilities to actually go and take your backups and put them into different locations. So AZ is going to talk about this as well. So the ability to recover out of AWS. So you can protect your EC2 instances, your EBS volumes into snapshots, offload those into S3, Deep Archive, whatever you want. And then the integration with Veeam Backup and Replication allows you to also not only manage all these backups and backup policies from Veeam Backup and Replication, but also do things like backup copy jobs. So when you think about the 3-2-1 rule, where you want to have 3 copies of your data across 2 media types with at least one off-site, all through Veeam Backup and Replication, you can go and do copy jobs to your local Veeam Backup and Replication repositories, copy jobs to different repositories in Azure, and so on and so forth. You can also do cloud mobility to different platforms as well. And it's very easy and very powerful to do that.
Can you compress the snapshot before sending it to S3?
What we do is that we decompress the data, or we're getting it and we're compressing before we're sending it to the backup file to S3. So yeah, that's possible.
Okay, very good.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to continue or kind of to elaborate on this story, and I'm going to show you some of the things. So here is Veeam Backup and Replication version 11a, the latest version. And what I'm going to do, the first thing is to go to my PowerShell console and to run the script. And you can see CFD12. This is the name of my GCP instance to be, because essentially what I'm doing, I'm bringing my VMware VM, what used to be a VMware VM. It's a Linux server that I had on premises. I protected it, and now I'm streaming it to GCP. And this is the new functionality, and it felt like it was really important to explain what it is. So by doing that, I'm kind of back to backup and application console. But by doing that, you can see that we have nailed, the 3 of the hyperscalers. So essentially, you can take the Hyper-V VM or vSphere VM, Nutanix VM, or, migrate them across the clouds. So recover them from on-premises to AWS, to Microsoft Azure, to GCP. We have already shown the AWS recovery and Microsoft Azure recovery. So what I'm doing right now is to showing you the the last piece of that puzzle altogether. All right, so the process would take around 15 minutes, but I can show you already that it's running and preparing the proxy appliance in GCP, because I have previously configured my Veeam Backup application to already work with GCP. I connected them, I created a project, and then whenever it's done, we'll go to GCP and we'll see the newly created VM instance over there. Okay, so for now, I would like to to switch a little bit back and go to my one of those consoles that David was talking about. So I've got Veeam Backup for AWS, and the newest version 4, it actually has an ability to protect EFS shares, which is really important. Again, EC2, RDS, and VPC, this is something that we've been already showing, so I'm not going to stop there and going to play with the newest edition, newest version 4 as a EFS backup and EFS recovery. And for that, what I'm going to do is I have already, I went to my EFS, obviously it's not EFS, but I went to my EFS service, and I have created CFD12 file share, which is something that I'm going to protect right now. So I have mounted to my Linux server, and I'm going to fill it with some information, just that you can see that it's everything live. So I've got some of the documents I would like to move there. Those going to be those documents, including the very important one that we're going to check. And now I'm going to copy them into that share. Okay, and the copy is done. I can go back to my folder, and just to show you that those files exist over there. You can see they didn't exist before. So what we can do right now is go to the Veeam Backup for AWS. I have pre-created the policy, but you can see that I have never executed it. So I just I'm going to run it right now. And while it's running, I'm going to explain what I did before. Well, the policy creation looks like that. You go to, the policy wizard, you go to sources, where you have to provide your IAM role, and then the region where you're going to select or protect the file share, which is important to you. And then you're going to select whether you need to protect everything or the particular file shares. So for my example, I'm going to protect just CFD12, which is here. And then that's kind of it. As for the targets, on the next step, you have to specify the backup vault or the place where the backup would actually go. And it could be done in the same region where the original share is. This is something that I'm doing. However, I could have also enabled the backup copy and just enable that share to copy to some of the other regions whenever, I have the preference. Okay, going to cancel it for now and going to disable it. Cost estimation step is really important, because this is one of the other things that we have across all the wizards, because it's really important to know how much you're going to pay at the end of the month for this particular policy to run. And you can see if you're not happy about something, please reconsider running that policy, or the frequency of it, or the scope of the data that you're trying to protect, or something like that. But at least you're having a good estimation of again, the payment at the end of the month.
I'm kind of getting to a weird spot at this point because I'm looking at all of the different UIs, and this one is completely different from the past 3 that I've seen. Have y'all thought about trying to centralize or maybe universalize everything to the same look and feel rather than multiple different looks and feels in terms of your UI?
Okay, so yeah, back to your question, we do have the central management point. It's Veeam Backup and Replication, and this is something that I've already shown you. Okay, you can have a look here, but the product is so big and can protect many of the platforms. So sometimes you don't have all of them, or sometimes you just have one, AWS cloud. Why would you need to install something that would, be big and clunky and everything? Instead, what you would do is you would go to the particular marketplace, for example, AWS marketplace, since I'm talking about AWS here, and install the point solution. So if you have, just AWS workloads, protect them over here and be nice. However, you can also manage them centrally from Veeam Backup and Replication.
Right. I think my question is more in terms of the look and feel of the UI, right? And I think this, like you said, this one is very centralized for AWS, but in the same way, I could build an EC2 instance in AWS and install Veeam BNR if I wanted to and have that centralized repository in AWS, right?
Yeah, but then why would you do that if you didn't have any other clouds? I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would just go for this, for the point solution if I had something deployed in AWS. All right, going to the status of my job. Well, it's not a job, it's EFS policy. You can see that, everything's protected now. Let's go to the protected data where I have a new tab, which is, AFC tab. You can see that I've got CFD12 folder protected with one of the restore points. Okay, so probably it's time to go ahead and delete something, or actually everything from here. So what I'm going to do is, just remove everything from the folder to show you that, okay, there is nothing. There used to be some documents, but now I don't have anything. So now I'm going to restore or show you the file level recovery for EFC. Basically, you have to, to provide a recovery list. And since I'm doing, the kind of a bunch of documents, I'm going to recover everything that was inside of the folder. So kind of going for the root one. And then the recovery mode, I would skip it for now. The recovery mode is, I have selected recovery to original location, not going to, to use different folder. Now I'm going to show you the recovery process. Okay, so recovery process would take around a minute or so, but then it's really important to note that you can go, every time you can go to the session logs and to see the progress of it. And meanwhile, or while it's happening, I can show you another thing that
I have a question
Ned,
about how EFS works, how the backup process works. Is it spinning up an EC2 instance and mounting EFS to do the backup, or are you taking that backup in some other way? I'm just wondering from like a cost and deployment perspective.
Okay, so unlike the typical backup, comparing to EC2 protection or RDS protection, it's not per se spinning up the, the worker that we were talking about. So it's purely using the APIs available from the AWS perspective and just, bringing the data into the backup vault.
Okay. And can you transfer that data to a different cloud service, send it over to Azure or GCP? I know there's not an exact mapping of EFS to one of those other services, but can I get at least the files and recover them to an Azure file share or something like that?
Okay, well, technically speaking, you can do that. Although, at least the procedures and and the wizards and everything were designed in a way that you would, kind of recover the data back inside of AWS. However, you can always mount the share like somewhere else and you can bring the data over. So technically speaking, yeah, you can do it, but just, it would require some architecture. Yeah.
Does it capture any metadata about the EFS tags, that kind of stuff? If you want to,
it was actually shown in the backup policy wizard that I have.
I missed it. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no worries. No worries. My recovery is done. So thank you for those questions. So you kept me busy with it. What I can do right now, I can go back and see what is inside of my folder. You can see that there is a new folder created, AWS Backup Restore. So like I can go there, can show you the list of the files and open the very important file because I would like to, to check the validity of my data and everything. All right, now I'm pretty happy that my data is back to my share, and it's really important to also celebrate the 5th of November. Now I can, I can come back to the console and kind of to show you the last thing here, talking about AWS, because whenever someone asked about how the data could be encrypted there. And so we have the repositories and the latest feature to version 4, which is here. So if you select any of the repositories over there and go to the options, edit encryption settings, and then you can use the password encryption or the KMS encryption, depending on your preference. Could be AWS created keys or your own keys that you prefer via the KMS service. Okay, that's it for the AWS.
Hey, Andrew, for the bucket options that you have here, I don't know that it got shown. Is it only, quote unquote, hyperscaler S3 services, or is it all S3 compatible?
Okay, so for now, again, I'm running a native console in AWS. Therefore, I would like all of my data to stay here, right? So I've got the S3 standard, S3 Glacier Deep Archive. However, if we come back to the main console, Veeam Backup and Application, again, I can see some of the data coming to S3 over there, and I can navigate myself to external repository. Okay, for example, this one would be here, and you can see some of my EC2 instances. I can see them here, and I can definitely migrate them, like perform the backup copy job and migrate them to S3 compatible storages or to move them to some other clouds. Therefore, it's a cloud mobility.
Okay.
But sorry, Nathan Bennett again. I got to ask this question. You keep on saying, if I'm in AWS, I want to store all of my stuff in AWS. What if the account is compromised within AWS where you're storing all the stuff within AWS? Wouldn't you want to, going back to that 3-2-1, how would you do something like that with something specific to AWS only for AWS?
Okay, first of all, if you're using AWS with one account, well, I'm sorry for you. You should have some redundancy and not single point of failure and not like showing the account credentials or something like that. But then coming back to my previous point, again, so you can create a backup copy job using this interface. And I know you're new to Veeam, but well, here it is. It's a central management and central console that we're using. Okay, so what you can do is to copy of your AWS data from AWS to on-premises. And then from on-premises, you can copy it to Azure, to GCP, and you can maintain the 3-2-1 rule whatsoever. So it's plenty of options and just a matter of, the requirements and policies that you have inside of your company.
Okay, but then it goes back to that same problem that we just discussed in terms of the marketplace. Let's say I'm in Azure, on-premise, and also in AWS. We have specific marketplaces, both in Azure and on AWS, and then we have this one in VMware. Where is the data stored, and then how are you managing the back and forth in multiple different places? I'm not saying that it's a bad solution. What I'm trying to figure out is basically how you have this ability to centralize everything, which is great, but it kind of creates this complexity within multiple different UIs, multiple different modules, I guess I'll use your term, to manage all of it. And then, once again, this sort of everything in AWS, yes, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't really fit in terms of how, you said one centralized account, you feel sorry for me.
Okay, so under the managed servers, what you can see is, let's click on add the server. you can see 3 of the appliances over here: Veeam Backup for AWS, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Azure, Veeam Backup for GCP. You can connect to existing appliance, or you can deploy an appliance right from here. Okay, why is it important? Because now you can see all of those. I have an appliance in every cloud because I want to be, the cloud native and cloud specific. However, what I can see right now is from this particular tab over here in the external repository, for example, one of the, the technologies that we have. So under the platform, I can see all of my, I can see all of my backups in the corresponding platform, AWS, GCP, Microsoft Azure, doesn't really matter. Now I can migrate the data, or I can configure the policies, or I can configure the jobs and, use the central repository if I need, or I can use the multiple repositories, different clouds altogether. It's all flexible. It's only depends on the way how you, again, what your policies are and how you prefer them to be configured.
Okay, Andrew, I think I got it now. I think where I'm kind of off is this the marketplace solutions, right? I think if when you're deploying this particular screen that you're showing right here, everything makes sense. And so I think with a multi-cloud customer, that's basically what this all kind of boils back to, is that you need to have that versatility to move it across multiple different places, especially for ransomware things and all that type of stuff. Would that be correct, Andrew?
Yeah, that would be correct. And the other thing to provide a perspective here. So we all know that we are talking about the multi-cloud and the hybrid cloud these days, right? But then, for example, I've been talking to some of the companies, they use, let's say, AWS, and they use Azure. But the thing is that there are different departments who use AWS and Azure, and therefore one department doesn't want to know anything about the other. And so one department is using specifically AWS and, pretty happy about it, protecting all the data inside, moving it around, but still remaining in one cloud. There is another one working in Azure doing the same. And there might be, the backup administrator who wants to manage everything if they exist. But for some companies, they don't exist because they have, like different silos. So yeah, again, our way is to be flexible and to provide, solution for many types of scenarios.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's go to Veeam Backup for Azure to show specifically, things specifically to version 3, to the newest version. And with version 3, we got the Azure Sql Backup, which is really cool because now you can go to, for example, to policies and to see the different tab for Azure SQL. It used to be just tab for virtual machines, and now you can go there. And you can protect the SQL databases, servers with all the databases, managed instances. And we would do some of them would be magic, but then we would definitely extract the data from the database. Someone is going to ask about application, aware processing and transaction log handling. We would do that too. And we would store the data into the Azure Blob, for example, into the same, the repository inside of the cloud. I'm not going to go through all of the policies altogether. I can briefly show you that the process is really easy because you can go to sources. Again, you select the region where your database or the services are operating, and then you select the resources, a particular database, DB or 2, or all of them that are running inside. Or you can go and select the SQL servers. Let's see if I've got anything. Yeah, I've got 3 of them already, so I'm just rescanning them. So basically, it's really flexible, how many of them or how much you're going to protect. I'm going to close it for now. The processing options, that's really important because we could do them, the production server, kind of a direct backup into the repository, or we can do the staging server. And yeah, we do recommend to use the staging server. Could be one of them that you already have in Azure. And so the data, the data would be mounted there and the logs would be handled. And then, the data would be instructed. And then we even have the incremental backup chains and a kind of an analogy to change block tracking. We were very fans of this technology, the change block tracking for SQL running in Azure, kind of ironic a little bit. And as for, any other wizards, again, the cost estimation is really important to show how much you're going to pay for this policy running in particularly. I'm going to cancel it for now. But yeah, as for the protected data, you can see that I've got Azure SQL with multiple databases, some of them with like 1 point, some of them with 8 points, doesn't really matter. And I guess this is again, coming back to the previous, the kind of the previous topic about being able to point that particular wizard to any database and select the recovery of database. Okay, so you can see the wizard here. However, if you prefer Veeam Backup and Replication, there might be your choice. And so you have the management solution. You can see all of the databases over there too. And then you can right click on, the database that you need. And for this instance, you won't even have to go to the different console. You would be able to recover that particular database using the Azure account that you have provided. Okay, let me actually do that for you. The server would be the default one, and the account would be, did I specify it? Yeah, and the recovery name would be like restored. Okay, so I'm going just to launch this procedure, so you can see that everything is possible to do right from one console. Okay, now the recovery of the database would be happening. It would have a different name, and using the same account in Azure, I could have gone for the different region or different account. That's also a possibility. And yeah, it would take a couple of minutes to finish, but then yeah, it's pretty nice technology.
So you're backing up Azure SQL DB in Azure, an Azure SQL DB, but I thought you mentioned that you could restore to AWS or GCP. Did I not hear that correctly?
Okay, so recovery, it makes sense for the EC2 instances and virtual machines and VM instances. I'm talking about AWS, Azure, and GCP. Because the virtual machine is kind of doesn't have to be a virtual machine. It could be a physical server originally, built into the virtual machine.
You weren't speaking about Azure SQL DB recovery to those other cloud providers, right?
Yeah, it's particularly for the kind of a traditional workload servers or virtual machines.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Okay, it's time now to have a look at the operation that I was performing. I launched at the beginning of the section, recovery to GCE, and let's have a look. So yeah, what you can see right now, my virtual machine, what used to be a virtual machine running in VMware, it's converted. So I have performed the physical or virtual to cloud conversion, and it should be running in my GCP. So let's go to GCP. Let's check it out. Let's see if I actually have it. It should have the CFD12 name. So let's wait a couple of seconds for it to be refreshed. Yeah, so you can see right now my Linux server has been officially moved to GCP. So with that, there is a lot of kind of a cloud mobility across those clouds. There are some technology for a particular cloud, and encryption, application-aware processing, and everything that David was talking about.